Hi everyone, it's Dr. D'Angelo, and you're probably wondering where I am. Well, I'm at College Settlement Camp, and do we have an amazing program for you today. Mr. Glaze is going to come on and he's going to give you a little bit of insight as to what we're going to be doing, but you are in for a treat. I'm so excited, so let's get started.
Thank you, Dr. D'Angelo. So glad to be with you. I'm Mr. Glaze. I'm the principal of Hallowell. I also am at College Settlement Camp. I've been coming here with students since 1994. Woo! Long time, but I'll tell you, there is so much fun that you're going to have today. You're going to be involved in so many different activities. There's going to be a nature walk. There's going to be some lessons. You're going to get a tour of the camp. We're going to live stream the campfire, all to make sure that you have a wonderful experience with this great tradition every year, College Settlement Camp. Come on, let's have some fun.
I am loving this place. Mr. Glaze, what are we doing first?
Well, I'm thinking that we should start with a tour of camp.
I am so glad I brought my sneakers. Let's go.
So we're going to take a little walk through some of the trails in College Settlement. We have a lot of trails. We have about 235 acres. And just like the trails all in the Horsham Parks, there's a couple of things you want to look out for. For us, we always warn people about poison ivy. We say leaves of 3, let it be. And poison ivy is one of these plants that has many disguises. It can be a teeny tiny little plant like this. We have one here, shiny leaves. It's kind of reddish green right now, but it will turn bright green later on. Sometimes, not always, it has a red dot in the center. But the big obvious sign of poison ivy is this kind of stuff. It's a vining plant. The vines are really, really hairy. So anytime you see a vining plant going up a tree, be careful. Just leave it alone because this stuff can give you a really nasty rash. And we're going to stay on the trails. In fact, everyone at College Settlement, when they come to visit, we do keep them away from the poison ivy, trying to keep them on the grass trails. And as you look behind us, there's some beautiful trails down behind me. So we're going to take a walk, and Josh is going to point out some of the cooler things you can find down in our forest. Let's go.
So throughout the course of the day, we've been talking a lot about wild edibles. And those are things that you'll find growing in the wild that are safe to eat. As you saw, Mr. Glaze ate a dandelion and he really enjoyed it. So we're going to be talking about a couple more that you could eat out in the wild. There is a disclaimer. Here at camp, we know that we do not spray any man-made chemicals anywhere on site. So what I find growing here at camp, I know it's safe to eat. If you were walking out in Kohler Park or another area, unless you're absolutely certain that they do not spray chemicals, you probably don't want to eat it because, again, this could have a chemical, some residues on it, and you just want to kind of steer clear of that. So this here is what is known as garlic mustard. In the spring, it'll grow a long, bright green stalk, get a nice bunch of white flowers on the end, and you can tear the flowers off and eat that. Very distinct garlic flavor. In the fall, if you come to that same spot where you saw these growing, it'll be dried out and you can eat these seed pods. And the seed pods actually kind of have a wasabi type flavor, and some folks use them as a seasoning for their salads. So garlic mustard. So while we're here at camp, we love to look around for things like wild edibles, which we've talked about, and also just other cool things that we find happening in nature. So a lot of times before the trees start to grow and the foliage starts to come out, on a lot of long-stemmed plants, you'll find these. And this is an Ootheca, which is a praying mantis egg sac. So you find these all over the place, and from out of this egg sac, when it hatches, you'll get hundreds of baby praying mantises. So praying mantis is a very beneficial insect. They help eat a lot of the insects that we don't want around. But you might want to check your Christmas tree before you take it in your house, because there have been times when people have unwittingly brought Oothecas into their house and then had 100 pet praying manti.
So when you spend time outside, just stop for a moment and listen. There's always something going on. You just have to take time to listen. And here in the spring, we've lots of songbirds, some who went south for the winter. They've come back and they're making nests all over the place. We always think birds make their nests in the trees. Many birds actually make their nests on the ground. And so when you're out in the forest, stick to the trails, because you never know when you're going to disturb a nest, which is actually made from grasses and it's low down in the undercover. But as you can hear, this bird right here, he's probably singing to try and find a mate. This is probably a great bush for him, where he's going to help her build a nest. And right about now, which is beginning in May, is when many of our songbirds are laying. Also, take time to stop and smell the flowers. In the spring, we have so many wildflowers in Horsham and Hatboro, and you'll see some bees buzzing around. They're not going to bother you if you don't bother them. And take a minute and stop and look at them. Teeny tiny bees. They're our native bees. Big old fat bumblebees and masonry bees. And of course, you'll even see some yellow jackets and some wasps. They also enjoy the flowers. And wasps and hornets and yellow jackets, although no one likes them, they're kind of the ancestors of the honeybees. Honeybees are really just wasps that forgot how to hunt, because those wasps, they eat other insects, but they also come and drink the nectar. So take time to stop, smell the flowers, listen to the birds, and spend some time rather than just hiking through the woods.
All right, so this is one of my absolute favorite trees that we'll find growing in this part of the country. It is a native tree. This is an eastern white pine tree. So you'll see these all over the East Coast, sometimes even further down south, but this is where they really like to stay. One of the cool things about the eastern white pine is the sap, or the pine pitch, is an awesome antimicrobial. So if you happen to be out in the wilderness and if you were able to identify this tree and you had a wound or a cut, a small cut, you could use that to help kind of seal it, and it does have antimicrobial properties. So if you were, again, in a survival situation and you didn't have your Neosporin on you, you could find one of these trees and that'd help you out. Another cool part about this tree, the needles contain a load of vitamin C. So if you pull off the needles, there should be a bunch of 5, and you chew them up, spit them out, you'll get a nice healthy dose of vitamin C.
So running all the way through College Settlement, we have the Pennypack Creek. In fact, one of the elementaries is named after the Pennypack Creek. It's a really important tributary to the Delaware River. That means it flows into the Delaware River, into the Delaware Bay, and out into the Atlantic Ocean, and over to see my family over in Scotland. So, important thing about the creeks in our area, they are an absolute lifeline for many animals. And if you're lucky enough to get to go down to one of the parks and you want to check out what's in the creek, tread carefully, because most of the creatures in the creek you can't even see. They're camouflaged. The best way to figure out what lives in the creek is to gently pick up a rock and turn it over. Ooh, and there's lots of creatures here already. These are arthropods, animals without a background, without a backbone. And already on this rock, we have about 5 or 6 different kinds of creatures. This one right here, maybe I can get it on my finger. I'm going to be nice and gentle. This one here is eventually, so my nail doesn't look like much right now, this will eventually grow into a damselfly, which is like a dragonfly, except it holds its wings vertically. And all sorts of naiads, which are the young of flies. And in here, it looks like a blob of snot. That's actually a caddisfly larva. And this little guy will live under the water, hatch out, and then become a fly. So one of the things you're going to do if you are checking out the wildlife that lives in the creek, just make sure you put the rock back very gently where you found it, because this is an apartment complex for many critters. And you can learn a lot just by sitting by the side of the creek and seeing what happens. But Josh is going to show you some of the cool plants that you can find down in the wetlands and also by the side of the Pennypack or Park Creek. I know some of you guys live near Park Creek. We'll see what plants we can find.
All right, so here we are. We're still at the Pennypack Creek, on the banks of the Pennypack Creek, and there is a trifecta of really, really cool wetland plants right in this small area. So the first one is called skunk cabbage. So this is a wetland obligate plant. It means you'll pretty much only find it growing in a wetland, and whew, it is particularly ripe today. Cool thing about skunk cabbage is if you're walking in a wetland area when there's snow on the ground, these guys are usually the first or one of the first flowering plants to come up in the spring. They generate so much heat as they're flowering out of the ground, they will melt the snow around them. And so these are one of the first plants you'll see in the early spring. Second really cool plant we have here, this is called a mayapple. And the coolest thing I personally think about the mayapple is this is one of the primary sources of nutrition for native box turtles. So Sam, that we met earlier, out in the wild, he would eat the fruits from the mayapple, and this would sustain him long enough to make sure that he could find a mate, reproduce, and carry on his lineage. The third plant we have here is especially useful if you happen to accidentally run into poison ivy. This is called jewelweed, another wetland plant, and what jewelweed is known for, one of the things it's known for, is it helps reduce the inflammation of poison ivy blisters. So if you were out in the wild and you happen to notice you encountered poison ivy and you got the rash, if you found some jewelweed, you'd just kind of crush it up, roll it up in your fingers, rub it on to that poison ivy blister, and it would help relieve that itching and stinging pretty well. So some awesome native wetland obligate plants that you can find at a creek near you.
So that's the end of this part of our nature walk. We wish we had more time to spend with you, but maybe sometime not so far in the future, you guys will come over here and we'll do it in person.
Thanks for traipsing through the woods with us. Hopefully you learned a couple of things, and we hope to see you all soon.
Happy hiking!